As you mentioned, there are some differences. Some are good, some are bad. But what would you say the main challenge is for the church in the 21st century?
One of the most significant challenges, I don't know if I can say the main challenge, but one of the most significant is dealing with a radically changed mentality of human society. Up until very recently, human society, though it has always been very diverse and has always been filled with many different flavors and styles and customs, has always borne a common thread of a kind of normal, ethical, moral basis, even across wildly different cultures, even across wildly different religions. And so when Christianity could speak into this world, there was a kind of common voice that the world spoke back in. And this lasted for centuries and centuries, this dialogue between the church and the world. Well, in our days, society has changed so much that that common humanity that the church speaks to has really disintegrated into something almost unimaginable to previous generations. The church used to say, this is the truth, and the world would say, we don't believe that truth, we believe a different truth. And so the truths would go to war with each other. It's a very different thing when the world says, we don't believe that truth exists at all. Right? That's a very different kind of discussion and dialogue to have. So this to me is one of the great challenges that the church faces in the 21st century, is that humanity has disintegrated. Human society is disintegrated to such a level that the church has to see her mission in this regard as not dialoguing with a different point of view, but having to remind people what it means even just to be human, right? What it means to be a human creature, to be a human person. The very idea that there can be a right and a wrong, a good and a bad, all of which would have been taken for granted in every generation. Now these are things that the church needs to reteach the world. So it doesn't change the church's mission, it just adds to it quite a bit. Because certain things that we could take as starting points before, we increasingly cannot. And so the way that we would speak to society, even just 20 or even 10 years ago, sometimes we have to add a lot to that because the very basic categories are no longer there. And our job as a church is not to modify ourselves to meet this new lack of understanding. No, and that's where groups always go wrong, is saying the church has, or the society has debased itself, and so we must start to speak in this new debased manner. No, we have to speak as we've always spoken, and we have to lift society back up to where it ought to be. And that's a very important job for the church, and it's a very challenging mission. But you can't get overwhelmed by it. The great benefit of being the Church of Christ is that Christ is the one doing the work. So our job is simply to be faithful, but to understand the task that's in front of us and respond to it.